4 members of the HOA showed up at my farm gate as they had stepped out of a world that did not belong here. Their polished shoes sank into the mud as they looked around with the kind of discomfort city people feel when nature refuses to behave. Behind them stood Karen's influence, even though she stayed hidden, the real force pulling strings without ever stepping into the dirt herself. The tallest man cleared his throat and delivered the message like it was a legal order meant to erase everything I had built. They said the farm was lowering property values and that I needed to leave or sell before the community took further action. For a moment, I just stood there, realizing this was not about rules, but about power and someone wanting me gone. Then they finally said I must leave or sell immediately. No exceptions at all. Their spokesperson tried to sound official as he repeated that my farm was lowering property values. They acted like that phrase alone gave them authority over land they had never even stepped on before. Karen stood slightly behind them, arms crossed, wearing that smug expression, as she had already won something she did not understand. I almost laughed because these people were trying to lecture me about land that had been in my family long before their little community existed. What they did not realize was that half their neighborhood was once carved out of my own property deals years ago. So when they spoke about forcing me out, I could only think about how backwards their entire argument truly was. Karen's confidence made it worse because she looked at me like I was already defeated and about to disappear quietly. Then came their demand, simple and blunt, that I sell or leave immediately without delay or negotiation. And they said it as the decision had already been made for me before I even had a chance to respond. The next morning, everything felt quieter than usual. But that silence didn't last long. When I checked my mailbox, there it was, a crisp official envelope stamped with the HOA letterhead, as if it carried some kind of authority over my life. Inside was a formal notice telling me I had 60 days to vacate my own property or sell it under their conditions. The wording wasn't polite anymore. It was cold, structured, and deliberately threatening, as if they had already decided I no longer belonged here. What bothered me most wasn't the message itself, but how quickly they had escalated from talking to demanding. Karen's presence was obvious in every line, even if her name wasn't written anywhere. This was her style. Pressure first, control second, and no room left for discussion. I sat at my kitchen table reading it again, not reacting emotionally, just observing how far they were willing to push. Instead of getting angry, I made a decision to find out exactly what was driving all of this before I made my next move in response to their growing aggression. I didn't respond to the notice right away. Instead, I started making calls, asking questions, and quietly digging into everything I could find about what was really going on behind Karen and the HOA's sudden obsession with my farm. At first, most people avoided giving direct answers, but the more pressure I applied, the clearer the picture became. Karen wasn't acting out of confidence at all. She was drowning in financial trouble and desperately trying to hold things together before it all collapsed. Her house was sitting on the edge of foreclosure, and the bank had already started circling like it was only a matter of time. That changed everything about how I saw the situation. The aggressive demands, the fake authority, even the eviction notice. All of it started to feel less like power and more like panic, dressed up as control. The real goal wasn't rules or community standards. It was money. If she could force me off my land and get it for cheap, she could flip it fast, save herself, and walk away as if nothing ever happened. Suddenly, the entire conflict wasn't about me fitting into their world. It was about her trying to survive in hers. And that kind of desperation can make people dangerous in ways logic alone doesn't always predict. I didn't rush into confrontation after that. Instead, I started building something of my own in complete silence. If Karen wanted to play games of pressure and control, I decided it was time she played against someone who understood how real leverage actually works. I formed an LLC through a legal channel I had used before for situations that required discretion, keeping everything clean, invisible, and untraceable to anyone watching casually. Then I made a move that would completely shift the balance without anyone noticing at first. Through that structure, I acquired her property quietly, the house she believed was her safety net. The same one she was depending on to escape her financial collapse. The irony was almost too perfect to ignore. While she was busy trying to push me out of my land, I was already standing on the foundation of her own life without her having the slightest idea. Nothing changed on the surface, but everything had already changed underneath. I didn't announce it, didn't celebrate it, just observed as the situation slowly tilted in a direction she could never see coming, waiting for the exact moment when truth would hit harder than anything she had planned. Karen showed up at my farm like a storm that had been building all night. She didn't even bother knocking properly, just marched straight up the drive shouting before she was halfway across the yard. Her voice carried all that frustration she had been holding in, demanding to know why I was still here when I was supposed to be gone already. She kept talking about bylaws, legal authority, and enforcement, as if those words alone could bend reality to her will. What made it almost unreal was how confident she still sounded, completely unaware that every sentence she was throwing at me was landing in the wrong direction. I just leaned against the fence and watched her, staying quiet while she built her own case out loud. Around us, neighbors started appearing at their windows and gates, drawn in by the noise like it was some kind of street performance. The more she spoke, the more unhinged she sounded, but I didn't interrupt once. She had no idea she was arguing with the person who now held the actual power over her situation, and the longer she went on, the more she unknowingly exposed just how far she had already fallen without realizing it. The sound of an engine breaking through the silence made everyone turn at once. A black SUV rolled slowly into the driveway, stopping just behind Karen as she was still mid-rant. Out stepped a calm, professional-looking legal agent holding a folder that immediately changed the atmosphere. He didn't waste time with greetings or explanations. He simply walked forward, looked at both of us, and asked Karen to step aside for a moment. That alone was enough to shift her tone, but what came next completely shattered her confidence. He opened the folder and confirmed in clear, official language that the property she was standing on was now legally owned by me. For a second, there was no sound at all, like the entire yard had stopped breathing. Karen froze mid-motion, her expression stuck between confusion and denial, as if her mind refused to accept what she had just heard. She looked at him, then at me, then back again, searching for some version of reality that still made sense. But there wasn't one anymore. The neighbors who had gathered around were silent, watching the moment unfold like a scene they would never forget. Her authority disappeared instantly, replaced by disbelief and panic that she couldn't control. I straightened up, looked at her calmly, and told her she needed to leave immediately, because the situation had already ended without her realizing it. By the time the sun started lowering, Karen was already gone. There was no more shouting, no more demands, just the echo of everything she had tried to control finally collapsing back on her. She left the way people do when they realize there is nothing left to argue with, only consequences to accept. The silence that followed felt heavier than the chaos she used to bring with her. Over the next day, the property began to change in a way that reflected something far deeper than simple ownership. The house she once treated like a symbol of status slowly turned into something completely different. Hay was stacked inside rooms that used to be spoken about with pride at HOA meetings. Farm tools lined the driveway where guests once parked polished cars. My tractor sat right in the front as if it had always belonged there, claiming space that used to be guarded by ego and pride. Every corner of the property told the same story now, not of control but of return. What she once called inappropriate or beneath her standards had become the very identity of the place again. The illusion of superiority that the HOA tried to build around her world no longer had anywhere to stand. It was replaced by something simpler, older, and stronger. A reminder that real ownership isn't about appearances. It's about roots, time, and truth. And as I stood there looking at everything settled back into place, one question remained in the air. Was this justice, or something even more complete than that?